in a world forgotten and lost over time, hidden away in the shadows of darkness. Our story begins. Today's journey is all about a mysterious old book that was almost lost over time and was hidden away for centuries, unknown to most parts of the world. And so, there's a big chance that you haven't heard of it. Now, this thing is one of the most mysterious and controversial books that ever existed. Even the country itself, where it was found, is shrouded in mysteries. But that's a story for another day. Welcome to the world of Jimmy's Randomness, a place where the past comes alive and the mysteries of the ancient world awaits. And now, Ethiopia isn't just some aged old country. Oh no. It's a treasure trove of history that has managed to keep its culture intact, being the only African nation that never fell under colonial rule. This unique aspect allows the locals to trace their roots all the way back to biblical times, specifically to Ham, one of Noah's sons, a connection that even lines up with Jewish history. And did you know that it has some of the oldest Bible scrolls in existence? Yep, these are even older than the well-known King James Bible. And unlike the 66 books in the standard version, the Ethiopian version has over 88, including some texts you won't find in other religious traditions. These include scrolls from both the Old and New Testaments, and even some that were previously unknown. Now, what's really interesting about this is that the country had these scrolls way before Christianity officially arrived in the 4th century. And so, unlike many other places where Christianity was introduced from the outside, here it's been woven into the fabric of Ethiopian society from pretty early on. Eventually, by the 6th century, even scholars like Cosmos Indicopleustes recognized the place as a Christian stronghold, welcoming refugees that were fleeing persecution from neighboring regions. Moreover, certain local tribes have been practicing Christianity for over more than 3,500 years. This makes the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, locally known as Teahedo, one of the oldest organized Christian communities globally. And get this, the country is also home to some of the earliest illustrated Christian texts ever discovered. These ancient old manuscripts, who are a part of the Gospels and are written in Ge'ez, were found in 2010 in a remote mountaintop monastery. All right, now let's dive into a fascinating tale, dating all the way back from the 10th century BC. The story goes that the legendary Queen of Sheba traveled to Jerusalem to seek wisdom from the very wise and well-known King Solomon. But what the Bible doesn't say is that these two rulers had a son named Menelik, and Queen Sheba took him back to Ethiopia, where he later became the first emperor. Now fast forward to 2012, when a group of scientists discovered some key evidence that strongly supports the story of Sheba's epic journey to Jerusalem and the birth of her son. But despite such rich tales and authenticity, this book often gets overlooked and, unfortunately, isn't considered part of the standard Bible. Now, the thing is that the Bible, as we know it today, wasn't always set in stone, you know. Originally, there were many different versions and interpretations floating around, and all of these texts were written in Hebrew, before being translated into other languages. Now, here's the kicker. In the first century, tons of books were written about Jesus' life and teachings, but many weren't exactly accurate and are more a kind of ancient fan fiction. And since there was no internet back then to fact-check these stories, the fake ones kept spreading like wildfire, leading to a whole bunch of mumbo-jumbo and misinformation. This was a massive headache for the early church leaders, who met up at the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, and the First Council of Constantinople in 381 AD, to sift through these scriptures and decide which ones were legit and which ones to toss away. They determined that a book was scripture if it was written by one of Jesus' direct followers or someone who had actually seen him teach. Over the years, the Bible has gone through many updates, but a major game changer came during the reign of King James I. Despite the Vulgate being around for about 500 years, the 1600s brought a flood of Bible versions that confused and worried the king. He wanted a Bible version that would not only settle religious disputes, but also reinforce his own power. And so, he got 47 different priests on board and divided them into 6 groups, who pointed out some of the errors in the existing translations and pushed for a new version. They spent 7 years looking over all kinds of Bible translations, with each group working on their own slice of the project. They also had to follow some tight rules to make sure they didn't let any personal opinions slip in. By the end of the year 1611, the King James Bible was finally ready to go and hit the shelves. So, when you think about the twists and turns in the history of the Bible, it's clear that what we read today has traveled a long and winding road, and with each step, adding its own color to the story. Now the question remains, why is the Ethiopian script so often left out? Well, it's got some special texts that we now call pseudepigrapha. These are stories that are wrongly credited to famous biblical folks and are more a kind of ancient fan fiction. Most Christian groups don't think these texts should be part of the official Bible lineup, and so they ditched books that were seen back then as not truly inspired by God. And so just imagine if someone today wrote a book claiming that Michael Jordan wasn't a great athlete. That book would be like a bomb. Because we all know Michael Jordan was legendary. But fast forward 500 years, and someone might stumble upon this book and start thinking, maybe Michael wasn't so great after all. To stop such lies from messing with future folks, it's best to clear them up right away. Now, let's talk about the Ethiopian broader and narrow canon. To keep it simple, a canon is like a set of rules or standards. The broader version has 81 books with all sorts of extra texts, including some famous ones like the Book of Enoch. Then there's the narrow canon, put together under Emperor Haile Selassie. It has 72 books and drops a few from the larger version. The why behind it, that's a whole debate on its own and a topic for another time. So, even within the Ethiopian Bible itself, there's a bit of controversy with these two different versions. It shares a lot with the Catholic and Orthodox Bibles, but it's also got a few extra Old Testament books that were likely written pretty late in the game. Another reason the Ethiopian Bible isn't as widely recognized could be because it's written in Ge'ez, which which isn't exactly a widely spoken language. And finally, politics. You see, way back in the early days of Christianity, the Roman emperor was more into grabbing power than spiritual growth. So, any scriptures that didn't fit his story were left out. This discovery could explain why there are some gaps between the other versions. One version seems to have a more complete set of biblical texts, while the other just has what was approved by the powers that be at the time. And that's a wrap for this story. Check out the channel for more interesting and intriguing videos. Subscribe, like, and see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.